what is the true form of God? What is the Swarupa of God? The Swarupa of God is I am. He's shining in the heart of each and every one of us as I am. So though we can also worship him in external form, he's most intimately present in our heart as our own self, as I am. So the best meditation of all is Swarupa Dhyana, meditation on our own real nature, on I am. That is what is otherwise called Atma Vichara. And when we meditate on our own being, we are meditating, we have the understanding that God is what is shining in our heart as I, so we meditate on him as I with love. But love is the essential, in any type of meditation, but love is the essential ingredient. If you don't have love, your mind will be wandering here and there. Wow. So whether you're meditating on a name or form of God, or on the Swarupa of God, which is ever shining in our heart as I, the love is essential.
Welcome to Silent Sage Speak, the podcast where timeless wisdom meets the present moment. I'm your host, Sukhdev Verdi, and in each episode, we delve into the profound teachings of nondual masters, those who have transcended the boundaries of duality and revealed the simplicity of existence. Join us on this journey beyond words as we explore the essence of being with those who have realized the truth that goes beyond language, beyond thought. Open your mind, silence your chatter, and let the wisdom of silent sages resonate within you. Today, my guest is someone who has been spreading the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi and has translated many of Bhagavan's original Tamil books into English. He also regularly conducts online and offline satsangs where he answers questions related to Bhagavan's teachings. You will see the love in his eyes and hear the devotion in his voice as he speaks so passionately about Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. I'd like to welcome to the show Michael James. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Right. Thank you.
It's such an honor to have you on, and I'm so grateful for you to spare the time to be on this. And you are one of those. I think I've met or spoken to many devotees of Sri Ramana Maharshi, but nobody comes close to the kind of devotion and love that you seem to be having for him. How did Ramana come into your life?
By grace only. There's nothing special about me. How he came into the life of each and every one of us, it's only by grace.
Yes.
We can tell a story, but the story is just a personal story. But that is, if we tell a story about the person we take ourselves to be, that is missing the point. Because this journey is not a journey. It's not a personal journey. It's a journey going beyond this false identification with the person that we seem to be. So if we attach importance to a personal story, we are giving reality to that which we are trying to go beyond. So long as we take this person to be real, we are bound. If we want to be free, we need to be ready to, at least at first, we need to recognize the unreality of this identification. I am this person. So ultimately, what brings any of us to this spiritual path, it is ultimately only grace. Because the very nature of ego is to go outwards. So the love to go within cannot come from ego. It can come only from our original source, and that is grace. But as Bhagavan said, grace is not something special. It's not something that's going to descend from heaven or somewhere. Grace is what is shining in the heart of each and every one of us as our own being, I am. So the more we, well, it is grace that Bhagavan often used to say, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. Because it is grace that draws us to this path. It's grace that leads us along this path, that guides us and that motivates us to pursue this path. And finally, it is grace that will swallow us entirely, which is the goal we're all seeking. annihilation of ego, the complete surrender of ourself. That surrender is not possible without grace.
Yes, yes. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And you went straight into the teaching. I love that.
I
You
mean,
know,
what else is there to talk about?
yes, Bhagwan. When I started on the path, and I wasn't really aware of Bhagwan's teachings, but then I also narrowed it down slowly, slowly, coming down to the ego, and then I came across Bhagwan's books, and then
Yeah.
it was like, yes, here is somebody who's talking about the root cause of everything. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
what why I'm so excited to talk to you about is about Ramana is because you are one person who I've seen who teaches what Ramana taught as it is, without
Yes.
any of your own personal views in it, mixed as it is.
Yes. I mean, what's the use of my personal views?
Yeah,
Bhagavan has made things so clear and so
right.
simple. But the reason most of us have difficulty grasping this is our minds are very complex. And the truth is very simple. So we need to be ready to jettison, to give up all our preconceived ideas, beliefs, attachments, and everything. We need to question the very fundamental, not only question the reality of all that we experience, all that we perceive, but also the reality of ourself, the perceiver. Who actually am I? Now I seem to be a person in this world seems to be real, but this world appears in whose view? Only in the view of this little I that says, I am this person, I am this body. So to know, we cannot know the reality of the world, which is what is known, the object, without knowing the reality of ourself, the subject, the knower.
Yeah.
And if we investigate the reality of the knower, then as Bhagavan says, Tedinal autum pidicum, if sought, it takes flight. That is this we seem to be this person. We have this false identification. I am this person. I am this body. So long as we're looking outwards. But if we look back within to find this, who is this I who is aware of itself as I am this body? This I will disappear because the adjuncts, the upadhis will drop off. And what will remain, that is the pure I. That is what we actually are.
Yeah, yeah. I can listen to you all day. The way you're just speaking, I can just listen.
Yeah.
Michael, I think there's a little your video is a little blurry, so I'll
Oh,
just keep going,
okay.
but that's fine. We'll keep it. Tell me, Bhagwan spoke. We speak about the self. What is the nature of the self according to Bhagwan? Like the absolute reality or the real, pure I that we talk about it. Uh,
Oh,
according to him, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Um, in English books, we often see this term the self with the definite article the and a capital S.
Yes.
But actually, in Indian languages, there's no equivalent to this, or at least in most Indian languages. Definitely in Sanskrit and Tamil, there's no definite article the, and there are no capital letters. So the term Bhagavan usually used in Tamil is tan. Tan simply means oneself.
Okay.
The Sanskrit word Atman is also often translated as the self, but it is, I think that's a misleading translation. I think the simple translation of Atman, as it's used in a spiritual context, is oneself.
Okay.
It's not one that is in English. When we use the word self, we don't usually use the word self in isolation. We usually use it as with a prefix as myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself. But I am myself are not two different things. I am myself, you are yourself, it is itself, he is himself. So this self is not pointing to any separate thing. For example, in Buddhism, they say many Buddhists believe there's no self. But actually, if we think about it, that has if you say there's no self, that means there's nothing, because everything is itself. There's no self other than the thing whose self it is. So I and myself are not two different things. I'm one. You and yourself are not two different things. They're two. So if you say no self, that means you don't exist. I don't exist. Nothing exists. So we shouldn't think of, when we use the word the self, it sounds like we're talking about something, but there's no self other than the thing whose self it is. And in this path of Advaita, what we are interested in is what we actually are. So what is our self? Now we mistake ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. Now we have what is called Dehatma Buddhi. We take ourselves to be the body. But that is not what we actually are. So we are investigating ourselves to find out, who am I, or what is myself?
Yeah.
If,
That's a good point about Buddhism, where you said they say there's no self, and even I think in Advaita they say even to deny that there is no self, there must be someone.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you say no self, it amounts to saying there's nothing. It's a complete denial of existence. But if there is something, that something is itself.
Yes.
So, but the problem arises when there's error on both sides. That is this classical debate between the various schools of Hindu philosophy, in other words, the Astika philosophies, and the Buddhists, about whether there's a self or not. Both are missing the point. Because what the Buddhists are denying there's a self, as if they're taking that there's something called the self, and they can deny it and still remain themselves. I am here and I'm denying the self. So the self is something other than me, because I must be present in order to deny it. The Nyayas and Vaiseshikas and all the various Astika schools of philosophy all say there is something called the self. But when it gets down to an argument, it becomes, you're arguing about you're taking Atman to be, that is very idea that you can dispute the existence of Atman means you can't question the existence of Atman without questioning your own existence. And the one thing that is sure is we exist. I am means I exist. That is absolutely certain. Because if I didn't exist, I couldn't be aware of anything. I have to exist in order to be aware. And we are all aware, so we all definitely exist. We may not be what we seem to be. This is what Buddha was actually teaching. In the Pali text, there's one statement that comes quite often, is sabbe dharma anatta. Dharma, in that context, means all phenomena. So all phenomena are not self. In other words, we are not any phenomena. This is exactly what Advaita is teaching. We are not, we are not, all phenomena are objects, things seen by us. So we cannot be any object, because phenomena appear and disappear. So anything that appears and disappears has to be something other than ourselves.
Yes.
Even this ego appears and disappears, because we seem to be ego in waking and dream. In sleep, there's no ego.
Right.
So ego cannot be what we actually are. That's why we have to go deep within. It's useless to argue there is a self, there is no self. I exist. Who am I? That's the point. And there cannot be any self other than I.
Yes. You're leading me straight into the questions yourself. This is so beautiful. Bhagavan's teachings, and his most famous work, Who Am I? He used to tell everybody, whoever came with a question, who is it that wants to know? Who is it that is asking?
Yeah.
You have studied it extensively. How would you describe is the best way of doing the self inquiry that Bhagwan himself wanted
Uh,
seekers to do?
My opinion is unimportant. What Bhagavan himself has
Yes,
said,
yes,
he has very, very clearly said in Nana, the book, Who Am I? There's
yes.
a sentence in the essay version, which is the version Bhagavan himself wrote. There's a sentence in which he defines what he means by Atma Vichara. Atma Vichara means self-investigation. So what is Atma Vichara? What he says in that sentence is, Sadakalamum manate atmavil vetirupatikutan Atma Vicharam endrupaya. That means the name Atma Vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. In other words, keeping the mind on something means keeping our attention on it. So we can know ourselves only by attending to ourselves. So all there is to self-investigation is keeping our attention on ourselves. It is extremely difficult, but in practice, when we try to do this, it seems to be very difficult. It is not difficult. Bhagavan has said there's nothing easier than this. So why, when Bhagavan says this is the easiest of all things, why does it seem so difficult to us? Supposing you're standing on the edge of a cliff, there's nothing easier than just jumping off. But most of us will find it very difficult to jump off because we know what the consequences will be. If we jump off that cliff, we'll end up a horrible mess on the bottom.
Yes,
So we are not ready to, because of our attachment to our life, we'll find it very difficult to jump.
yes.
But just because so the difficulty we have in jumping off that cliff is not that it's actually difficult. We just have to take one step and we're off the edge. It's actually very easy, but it's our lack of willingness makes it difficult. In exactly the same way with this, because Bhagavan has revealed what the nature of ego is. He's revealed this in so many places, but he's made it particularly clear in verse 25 of Uludunapdu. Uludunapdu is the 40 verses on what is.
Yeah.
And throughout this Uludunapdu, he's constantly emphasizing that the root problem is ego. If we get rid of ego, we get rid of all problems. So long as there's ego, we cannot, the problem, even if you get rid of one problem, another problem is going to come. So in verse 24, the previous verse, he says ego itself is samsara. There's no samsara other than ego. So in what he says in verse 25, it's actually in the last line of that verse, but he says what he's talking about. In the last line, he says, Uruvatra peya hande. Uruvatra means formless, without form. Pay is a Tamil word that means more or less the same as pisasa in Sanskrit. So a demon, a phantom. Pisasas are demons who will come and possess people. So this ego is such a demon who has come and possessed us, so to speak. So he calls it Uruvatra Pe Ahande, the formless demon ego. But that he says in the last line. What he says at the beginning, he begins by saying, Urupatri undam, which means grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongum, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So what he implies there is it's the very nature of ego to grasp form. Ego cannot come into existence, cannot stand, and cannot flourish without constantly grasping form. So the first form, ego is formless. So whatever form it grasps is something other than itself. So the first form that ego grasps is a body. That's why he says, grasping form, it comes into existence. That means as soon as we rise as ego, we project and we grasp a body as I. And without grasping that body as I, we cannot either rise or stand. So grasping form, it comes into existence, grasping form, it stands. Having grasped this form of this body, it is then constantly grasping other forms. How is it grasping? Ego is a formless phantom, so it's got no hands to grasp anything with. It grasps by its awareness, its attention. So we are constantly attending to phenomena, to forms of. But here, when Bhagavan talks about form, he's not just talking about physical forms. Any phenomena of any kind is a form. So the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the likes, the dislikes, all phenomena are forms. And it is the nature of ego to be constantly attending to forms, to the external world and to the thoughts in the mind. And without attending to these things, ego cannot stand for a moment. But what happens if instead of grasping any form, if ego tries to grasp itself? That he answers in the next sentence. He says, Te dinal otum pidicum. Te dinal literally means it's seeking. If what is seeking what, he doesn't say, but it's implied. If ego seeks itself, if it seeks to know its own reality, who am I? Otum pidicum, it will take flight. Right. That means it'll run away. Because we seem to be ego only so long as we're attending to other things. But if we turn our attention back towards ourselves to see what we actually are, who am I? There's no such thing as ego to be found. Because what is ego? Ego, as Bhagavan said in the previous verse, in verse 24, he described it as chit-jada-granthi. Chit means, in this context, it means satchit, the pure being awareness, what we actually are. And jada refers to the body. In fact, I'll tell you the meaning of that verse, because that verse is very important. In that verse, he says, Jada udal nanenadu, the insentient body, the Jada body does not say I. When he says it does not say I, what he implies is it's not aware of itself as I. And when he says body, he's not just talking about the physical form of the body, because in an earlier verse he says, Udal panchakosa uru, the body is a form of 5 sheaths. So when Bhagavan talks about body and says ego is nothing but that false awareness, I am this body, what he means by body is all the 5 sheaths. That is, we can use the technical Sanskrit terms, annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, but if you want to put it in simple English terms, the physical form of the body, annamaya kosha, is the physical form. The pranamaya kosha is the life. All the physiological functions, the breathing and the heartbeat and all these things, but enliven the body. Or the force that makes all these things function, whatever. We're not too concerned about these things. But anyway, we can simply say prana means life. Because when we experience a body as I, nobody has ever experienced a dead body as I. It's always a living body. So along with the physical form, there's the prana. And we also never experience a sleeping body as I. Any body that we experience as I always seems to us to be awake. In dream, we experience a body, but in dream, we don't think this is a dream body. No, I'm awake. It seems to us that we're in the waking state. So the body we experience as ourselves is, firstly, it's alive, so the prana is there. Secondly, it's awake. So that means the mind, the intellect, and the will. Manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and anandamaya kosha, these are all functioning within it. So when we experience ourselves as I am this body, we are not experiencing ourselves just as the physical form. The whole package of 5 sheaths is what we experience as I. So when he said the body, when he refers to the body as jada, it's non-aware, that means all these 5 sheaths are non-aware. That is, because in this context, mind, the manomaya kosha, means the grosser aspects of the mind, the perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on. These are all classified as manomaya kosha. Subtler than the manomaya kosha is the vijnanamaya kosha, the buddhi. That is the discerning, reasoning, the intellect, all the judging, and so that's a deeper function than all these grosser functions. And subtler than that is all the vasanas. The vasanas or samskaras, that's all our inclinations. They are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachments. They are what are called chittam or anandamaya kosha. They're also called karana sarira.
Yes.
Because they cause what cause all this. But generally, we talk about antakarana, the four inner instruments. That is manas, buddhi, chittam. That corresponds to manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and anandamaya kosha. The fourth one is ahankara. But ahankara is not one of the five sheaths. It is that which identifies all the five sheaths as I. As they often say in classical Advaita, the function of ego is abhimanam. Abhimanam means it's identifying itself. It's attaching itself to these five sheaths, and I am these five sheaths. So anyway, having clarified that, to come back to this verse 24, what Bhagavan says is, the jada body does not say I. In other words, it's not aware of itself as I. It's got no, with this jada, how can it be aware I if it does not aware of anything? So it's by definition, the body, all the five sheaths are jada.
Yeah, jada means insentient.
Yeah, the only aspect that is sentient is ego. But ego is not any of the five sheaths. So anyway, coming back to this part, the jada body is not aware of itself as I. And then he says, Satchit udiyadu. That means Satchit does not rise. Satchit just is. It doesn't rise, or it just is pure being, pure awareness. Then he says, between these two, one thing, I, rises as the extent of a body. Since it rises, it's not Satchit. Since it's I, since it's aware of itself as I, it's not the body. But it rises as the extent of a body. That is, ego is the I that has limited itself as this body, this form of five sheaths. The form of five sheaths is what is called upadhi. Upadhi, we usually translate in English as adjunct, but upadhi means anything that is mistaken to be something else, any disguise, any outward. So ego is that which is the I that identifies itself with a set of adjuncts, upadhis, which is this body consisting of five sheaths. So since it rises, it's not Satchit. Since it's aware of itself as I, it's not the body. So it's neither the body nor Satchit, but something that rises in between. When he says in between, that has there are two important points that are implied by his saying in between. Firstly, the ego is the only link between Satchit and all this appearance. So this appearance seems to exist. All this world seems to exist. Obviously, it draws its existence from Satchit, but it doesn't draw its existence directly from Satchit. It draws its existence from ego, which draws its existence from Satchit. So ego is the link between what is real and the appearance. That is one meaning of in between. Another meaning of in between is, supposing I read a story in a newspaper today, and I ask you, was that story true or false? You may say to me, it was neither true nor false. It was somewhere in between. What does that mean? It's got elements of truth, it's got elements of fiction. So it's neither entirely fictional nor entirely true. It's somewhere in between. That means it's got elements of this and elements of that. In the same way, ego, it borrows its existence and its awareness from Satchit. Because where else can it get its existence and awareness? Only from Satchit. and it borrows its form from the body.
Yeah.
So it's the combination. That's why it's called. Then he goes on to say, this is chit-jada-granthi. Chit-jada-granthi means chit is the sat-chit, jada is the body, and granthi means the knot.
Not.
So when these two things are seemingly entangled together, of course, chit is never entangled, but in the view of ego, chit seems to be entangled with the body. So it's that knot. That is what we need to sever. We need to cut this knot, break this false identification. And he says more than that. He says, this is chit-jada-granthi, bandham, it's bondage. Because there's no bondage other than this. Because we bound ourselves to this body, this is another thing Bhagavan often used to say. Bondage is not something that has come and caught you. The world isn't binding you. You are holding on to the world and complaining, but you're holding on to the body and world and complaining, oh, I'm bound, I'm bound. If you want to be free, you have to let go of these things.
Yes.
So, it's chit-jada-granthi, bandham, jivan, the soul, or whatever you want to call it. That is nothing but this false I. Jivan, nupame, subtle body. Here he uses the word subtle body. The reason he uses the word subtle body here, generally, when the 5 sheaths are classified into 3 bodies, the Annamaya Kosha is said to be the Stula Sarira. The Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Vijnanamaya Kosha are said to be the Sukshma Sarira.
Okay.
And the Anandamaya Kosha is Karana Sarira. But this is not using, here Bhagavan is not using Sukshma Sarira in that sense. Because ego is not any of these 5 sheaths. It identifies with the 5 sheaths, but it's not. So why does he use the word, the Tamil word nupame? It means subtle body. It's referring to a Sukshma Sarira. The reason he says that is, generally when it's talked of, when people in Vedanta, when they talk about rebirth, they say when the Stula Sarira dies, the Sukshma Sarira goes to another body. But when they're talking about Sukshma Sarira, they're not talking about the Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Vijnanamaya Kosha. They're talking about ego. So the word Sukshma Sarira is used in a different sense in different contexts. So when we talk about what goes from one life to another, it is ego. So in that sense, ego is Sukshma Sarira. So he says, chit-jada-granthi, bandham, jivan, nupame, ahande. Ahande means ego. Ahande is a Tamil word. It's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit ahanta, which means I-ness. It means ego. Each samsara, this samsara, there's no samsara other than this ego. And it is manam. Manam there, he's using mind in the sense, we need to be careful when the word mind, because mind is used in different sense in different contexts. When we're talking about one of the 4 antakaranas, the mind means the grosser functions of the mind. That's the Manomaya Kosha. But we also talk about the mind seeing the world. What sees the world is ego. So we often use the term mind to refer to the subject. So when we talk about mind, we need to be clear whether we're talking about the subject or the object. All the other thoughts are objects, but the first thought, I, is the subject. That is ego. So in that sense, he says this I that rises is manam. I can't remember exactly why I was saying this, but this just to clarify what Bhagavan means by ego. But why I started to talk about verse 25, the next verse, where he says, ego, grasping form, it comes into existence, grasping form, it stands, grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly, leaving form, it grasps form, if sought, it takes flight. why I mentioned that is in connection with self-investigation. Why we find this difficult? Because the nature of ego, as Bhagavan makes clear in that verse, is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to other things. So long as we're attending to anything other than ourselves, that means any thought, any feeling, any emotion, any object, any perception, anything, we are feeding ego. So we seem to be ego only so long as we're attending to other things. But when we turn our attention back to face ourselves, there's no such thing as ego to be found. Because when we turn our attention, so long as we are attending to other things, ego is attached to these upadhis, these adjuncts, this bundle of 5 sheaths, and all that goes with it. That is, the basic adjunct is this bundle of 5 sheaths. But because I identify with this bundle of 5 sheaths, I am sitting here, I am thinking, I am talking. These are all upadhis that are connected with this basic upadhi, this body, which is a bundle of 5 sheaths. So anything that if we say I'm tall, I'm short, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm happy, I'm miserable, I'm young, I'm old, all these are all connected with this bundle of 5 sheaths. So long as we are attending to other things, we are firmly attached to this bundle of 5 sheaths. But when we turn our attention back to ourselves to see who am I, we're no longer grasping form. We are grasping ourself, the formless awareness. That's why he says ego cannot exist without grasping form, but it itself is formless. So when we investigate this ego, it's got nothing to stand on. It can stand only by grasping other things. So when instead of attending to anything other than ourselves, if we attend to ourself alone, ourself doesn't mean the body or the mind or anything. Attend to ourself means attend to I and nothing but I. Attend to this basic awareness. The adjuncts will drop off and ego will subside. So the reason we find it difficult to attend to ourselves is not because it's actually difficult, because we are unwilling to let go. Because we are so attached to all these things. Attending to ourselves is like putting our head on the guillotine, on the chopping block. We know if we put our head there, it's going to be, so we're unwilling to do so.
Yes.
That's why in the next verse, in verse 26, Bhagavan says, this is a very, very important verse, but this is the verse which many people will find very unpalatable, because Bhagavan, even many Advaitins will find this verse 26 to be unpalatable, because Bhagavan, he's an extremely radical Advaitin. He goes to the very source.
The 40 verses, you're talking about the 40 verses?
40 verses, yes. So in verse 26, what he says is, Ahande undayin anatum undahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't, ahande indrail indra anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahande yabamam. Ego itself is everything. So why does he say that? Because everything everything means all phenomena. They exist only in the view of ego. So only when we rise as ego do phenomena seem to exist. In sleep, when we don't rise as ego, there are no phenomena at all. So it's only when we rise as ego that all these things come into existence. When we don't rise as ego, nothing other than ourself exists. So he says, ego itself is everything. In the Upanishads, it said, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman. All this is Brahman. But Bhagavan says, all this is ego. So is Bhagavan contradicting the Upanishads? No, he's clarifying what they meant. Bhagavan is providing the missing link, so to speak. all of this is ego. And because it's nothing but, like, when you dream, you see a whole dream world. You see so many people in it. You have so many experiences, interactions. But when you wake up, it was all your own mental fabrication. That dream had no existence independent of you. So you, as ego, were seeing yourself as the dream world. So ego was the dreamer, and ego sees itself as a dream world. Likewise, Bhagavan said this present state is a dream. We are seeing ourselves as all of this. So ego itself is everything. Then he says, the last sentence, he says, Adalal yadu idu endru nadale ovadal yabameno. That means, therefore, know that investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what ego is. If we investigate ego, as he said in the previous verse, to the extent to which we attend to ego, we as ego subside. And if we attend to ourselves keenly enough, we'll dissolve forever back into our source, into Sat Chit.
Yeah.
To the extent that ego subsides, everything else subsides along with it. So we have to be willing to surrender ourselves. And surrendering ourselves means surrendering everything. So this requires 100% vairagya, tyaga, renunciation. Renunciation isn't changing the color of our cloth, or growing beard and long hair, or shaving ourselves, or anything like that. Renunciation is nothing but renunciation of ego. Bhagavan said this outward sannyasa is according to prarabdha. If it's your prarabdha to be married, you'll be married. If it's your prarabdha to be a sannyasi, you'll be a sannyasi. These are outward things. The problem lies that the true renunciation is not in changing your name, or changing the color of your cloth, or shaving your hair, or growing your hair, or anything like that. The true renunciation is giving up the identification with the body. So Bhagavan has said, the one who has annihilated ego alone is a true Brahmin and a true sannyasi. But very hard indeed is it to annihilate the ego for those who feel, I am a Brahmin, I am a sannyasi. That is an ego.
Yes.
So if you really want to be a Brahmin, if you really want to be a sannyasi, annihilate ego. And Bhagavan has said, the householder, the grahastha, who doesn't feel I am a grahastha, is a better sannyasi than the sannyasi who feels I am a sannyasi.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's another place where I've heard him say, true surrender means surrendering the surrenderer.
The surrenderer, yes, exactly, yes. Because the one who is to surrender is ego. So it's called Atma Samapanam. Atma in Atma Samapanam, Atma means ego. We are ego is surrendering itself.
Yeah.
And the only way to surrender ourselves is to investigate ourselves. Because so long as we're attending to other things, we are feeding this ego, nourishing ego. So self-investigation is complete self-surrender. So in order to surrender ourselves, we not only need supreme vairagya, we also need supreme bhakti. Bhakti and vairagya actually are two sides of the same coin. To the extent we have love, to the extent we have love for what is real, we will lose the desire or attachment to what is unreal. So this path requires supreme devotion. Bhagavan has made it clear, bhakti. Many people who follow bhakti marga, they think that Advaita is a very dry jnana marga. It's not. It doesn't have any room for bhakti, because they say all is one. So how can there be love with it when there's only one? That's what many of people following bhakti marga think. Many people who think they're following jnana marga, they think, oh, this jnana marga is superior. We don't have anything to do with this bhakti or this, what Totapuri said to Ramakrishna, or this making of chapati.
Yes, yeah.
So, but both neither understand. If we understand what is true bhakti, we will know what is true jnana. If we know what is true jnana, we will know what is true bhakti. Because in a deeper sense, bhakti and jnana are one. True jnana is nothing but complete surrender of ego. And without supreme love, without all-consuming love, we will not be ready to surrender ego. So it's because of our lack of bhakti that this path seems to be difficult. It seems it's so easy to. It seems to us so easy to be always attending to other things. In fact, we'll do anything to attend to something other than ourselves, because attending to ourselves means we are cutting our own throat, so to speak.
Yes. Such great wisdom you have just shared. In Advaita, we talk about the
This
four
is not my
functions.
wisdom. This is all Bhagavan's
Yes,
wisdom. I
yes,
know
yes.
nothing. I know nothing.
Yes.
I'm just
No, but it's
a
just so nice
gramophone.
hearing it from you.
Yeah.
You're a great gramophone, if that's what you are. In Advaita, we talk about the mind having four functions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we actually know anything? The manas, chitta, buddhi, ankara, these four parts. It's what we actually think is done by the manas. What we actually know is done by the buddhi. What we remember is done by the chitta. All these three parts are doing something. The ahankara is the one that does nothing, is not involved in any of them. It just comes at the top and says, I am the one who thinks. I know. I remember.
That is why it is said ahankara is the abhimanam. It identifies itself.
Yes.
So when the manas is thinking or feeling or perceiving or remembering, I am thinking, I am feeling, I am perceiving.
Yeah.
And likewise with the buddhi, I am judging, I see it clearly, I understand, I don't understand.
Yes.
Or that the chittam, the
memory.
It's not actually memory. There's a confusion there. Generally, it's often translated as memory, but the correct meaning of chittam is will. The reason it is said to be memory is samskaras or vasanas, which is what makes up the chittam, are often translated as impressions and often explained as impressions. So you have experiences, and those experiences leave impressions. But that's a misunderstanding. Vasanas and samskaras, more or less in this context, they're synonymous. They are not impressions, they are inclinations. Inclinations is what comes from us. So when our mind is going outwards under the sway of vasanas, that means it's under the sway of its inclinations. So the inclinations are the likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on in their seed form. That is the vasanas. So a more correct translation of vasana or samskara is inclination. An impression is something that you receive from outside, or seemingly you receive from outside. Actually, everything outside is a projection of our own vasanas. But because people give reality to what is outside, they say, oh, I had this experience, and so this experience has left impressions, and so these impressions are samskaras, and that's what makes me act. That's misunderstanding. The causal pathway is coming from within. What is the first cause? The first cause is our rising as ego. Ego is the original cause of everything. So all causation comes from ego going outwards. If you take vasanas or samskaras to be impressions, you're thinking the causation is coming from outside, coming inwards. It's a misunderstanding. So memory actually is a part of manomaya kosha, not a part of chittam, not a part of the anandamaya kosha.
Okay.
because memories are gross. They're just in. We've had. We remember our childhood. We remember going to school. We remember when we were in. We remember so many things in the past. These are just. We've had experiences. Those experiences have left impressions, which are what we now experience. Some we can remember, some we can't remember. The impressions are what caused those experiences in the first place. Bhagavan said, when you dream, all that you are seeing in your dream is a projection of your own vasanas. Bhagavan gave the analogy of, when explaining how the world is created, he gave the analogy of a cinema projector. The arc light in the cinema projector, that is the heart, the pure awareness, satchit. The reel of film, that is the vasanas. And what appears on the screen, that is the external world, including our body and everything. So it's the vasanas, it's what we see outwardly as all these phenomena is nothing but a projection of the vasanas. The vasanas, Bhagavan often used the term Vishaya Vasana. Vishaya Vasana means the inclination to experience Vishayas, the inclination to seek happiness in Vishayas. And he said the Vishayas are nothing but sprouted forms of the vasanas. The vasanas are the seeds that sprout as all these phenomena.
Wow. Wow. Oh, wow.
So, Bhagavan has simplified and clarified the teachings of Advaita in so many ways. Because the trouble with any teachings are in words. And words go through the filter of our mind. So each one of us understands the teachings in different ways according to our own preconceptions. So over the time, so many people have explained Advaita. And also because in the past in India was a hotbed of ideas. A few hundred years ago, for thousands of years, it's been like this in India. There have been so many competing philosophies, so many competing ideas. Yeah. So one of among all those competing ideas is this, the deepest idea of all, which is Advaita. Everyone loves to attack Advaita because Advaita is very radical.
Yes.
So people who identify themselves as Advaitins, they want to defend their Advaita against all these attacks. But often they don't understand the subtleties of Advaita. If they really understood Advaita, they would say, let anyone attack, what doesn't matter to me. So when you engage in argument with others, you need to give explanations. You need to give explanation. There's no use if we are having a discussion and there's some disagreement, and I'm trying to help you to understand my point of view, there's no point in me saying things that you're going to disagree with. I have to try to put it in a way that will be acceptable to you. So in this way, over time, so many explanations have come into Advaita. Bhagavan put it very nicely. A lot of these explanations in classical Advaita, Bhagavan said, they are answers given to the questions of others. So when you're talking with others, people who are not ready to accept, you have to dilute it. And it's appropriate to dilute. We shouldn't try to force people to believe what they're not willing to believe. So even Bhagavan, often when Bhagavan was answering questions, he diluted his teachings to suit the person who was asking the questions. In fact, you know that there was a sadhu called what was his name, who wrote Yogananda. In the 1920s and 30s, he went to America. He started the Self-Realization Fellow.
The Autobiography of a Yogi.
Autobiography of a Yogi, yes. He came to Bhagavan sometime in the mid-1930s.
Yes.
And one question he asked Bhagavan was, Bhagavan, what instruction should be given for the uplift of the masses? Bhagavan said, instructions cannot be given en masse. The teaching has to be according to the taught. So different teachings are applicable at different levels. Why take Vedanta, for example. There's so many different schools of Vedanta. They are all dealing with the same basic texts, the Upanishad, the Brahma Sutra, and the Bhagavad Gita, but all are interpreting them in very, very different ways. In fact, many of them are strongly opposed to the other ones. So why is that? Is it that did the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and so on, are they just giving a confusing idea that you can take in any way you want? No. There are teachings they give at many different levels. Because just like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say it very nicely, he said, a mother, if she's got 10 children, she's not going to feed them all the same food. The smallest child, she's going to feed on her breast milk. The child who's a little older, she's going to give some soft food suitable to them. The fully grown child, she's going to give food suitable for adults. So Vedanta, what is great about Vedanta, it caters for everyone. There's something in Vedanta for everyone. And if you see many, the Gita, or so many of all these texts, the Upanishads, the Purana, the Mahabharata, or the Bhagavatam, or the Ramayana, or any of these things, you'll find they're full of teachings at many different levels. The same text can be interpreted at different levels. And they're meant to be like that because they have to cater for children at different levels. The mother can't give the same food. She's not going to give her breast milk to a 20-year-old child. She's not going to give her food for a 20-year-old child to a newly born baby. Yeah. So this is the greatness of Vedanta. It caters for everyone. So Bhagavan, often when Bhagavan was answering questions, just like Krishna, Bhagavan pointed out in Gita, in chapter 2, Krishna begins from the very highest teaching. But Arjuna was in a very bewildered state, so he wasn't able to, it wasn't sufficient for him just the highest teaching. He wasn't quite ready for that yet. So Krishna came down and gave many other different teaching. So Gita's got something for everyone. Likewise, Bhagavan, if we want to get the true teachings of Bhagavan, the core teachings of Bhagavan, his own original writings, work like Nana, Who Am I, Ulladu for 40 verses, Upadesha Undya, which in Sanskrit is called Upadesha Saram, and the 5 hymns he wrote on Arunachala Stuti Panchakam. Here we can get the very heart of Bhagavan's teachings, his teachings in their purest form. But if we read books like Talks with Ramana Maharshi, Day by Day, Maharshi's Gospel, these books all have useful things in them, but a lot of the things, firstly, some of them are not very well recorded. They're not accurate recordings of what Bhagavan said, but also Bhagavan was answering people's questions. He was giving answers that were suitable to the questioner. And Bhagavan himself, there's one verse in Ulladu Anabandam, in which Bhagavan says, one idea that is often said in classical Advaita, I think even Adi Shankara has said this in his commentaries on the Prasthanatraya. I'm not quite sure about that. I'm not an expert on Shankara. But anyway, it is often said that for the jnani, agamya and sanchita will cease, but prarabdha will remain for the duration of the body. Yes. Bhagavan has said that answer was an answer given to the question of others. When a husband dies, if a husband has 3 wives and he dies, all 3 wives are going to become widows. You can't have one wife who remains unwidowed. Likewise, who is the doer of agamya? It is ego. Who is the experiencer of the fruit of agamya? In other words, the sanchita and the prarabdha, it is ego. When ego dies, all the 3 karmas come to an end. But For people who take Vijnani to be a person, who fail to understand that Vijnani is not the... Bhagavan appeared in name and form as a person. But Bhagavan said, this body is not I. But if we take him to be a body, then that body has a prarabdha, so it seems. So such answers have to be given to suit people who are not ready to understand more deeply. So a lot of the answers that Bhagavan gave were answers given to the questions of others. A lot of the explanations we find in classical Advaita are answers given to the question of others. So there's a lot of we need, this is why we need to have viveka. We need to have come with a, we need to think deeply about these things. This is why it said Sravana Manana Nididhyasana. First, we need to hear what is said, but then we need to think about it deeply. We need to make sense. Why is it said like this here and like that there? There seems to be a contradiction. How to make sense of that contradiction? We need to think about it. And if we don't think about it and come to a clear understanding, how can we put it into practice? If you don't, if someone gives you a car and says drive the car, and you've got no idea what the function of the steering wheel, what's the function of the brake and the clutch and all these things, you won't be able to drive it. So this is a very simple path, but a very deep and subtle path. So we need to have this is true drisya viveka. We are trying to distinguish the seer from the seen. We are trying to distinguish the subject from the objects and to penetrate into the subject to find what is the reality of the subject. So it's a very deep and subtle thing. It's simple, but it's deep and subtle. So it requires a certain subtlety of understanding. But because over time, so many different answers have been given to so many different questions, and to defend Advaita against attacks from so many different quarters, but you could fill libraries full of all the books that have been written on Advaita.
Yeah.
But all of that can be condensed down to all Bhagavan's original works. His own original writings, it comes to maybe about 250 verses and 20 paragraphs of Nana. This is Bhagavan's essential teaching. So he's summarized the whole of Vedanta into these simple verses. And he's shown very clearly this artificial divide between jnana and bhakti, between Advaita and all the others. That is, there's no room for that, because there cannot be jnana without bhakti. And you can't, bhakti without jnana is still relatively superficial. The deepest form of bhakti is jnana. Ultimately, jnana and bhakti are one and the same.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places where he says abiding as the self is the true worship.
Yes.
Or the highest worship.
Yes.
That is great. Tell me, like you said now, obviously, Bhagavan always said that I am not this, I am not the form. And then why I'm asking that is, he spoke a lot about the guru. And he always said the guru need not be in the human form. It could be, he could be in any other form. So I want you to shed some light on Bhagavan's teachings of what the guru is. He said a lot of quotes like, the guru pulls from inside and he pushes from outside. Those teachings, those would be lovely.
Yeah. Bhagavan made it clear guru is absolutely essential. But the idea most of us have about a guru is a person outside who tells you do this, do that. Don't do that. That is not the function of guru. Guru, in one place in Nana, in Who Am I, Bhagavan says, God and guru are in truth not different. That means the only real guru is God. And God is nothing but our own self. So guru is always residing in our heart as our own being, I am. Because we don't have love to turn within, it's necessary for Guru to appear outside to tell us to turn within. Bhagavan had no Guru in human form, but Bhagavan worshipped Arunachala as his Guru. And in one of the verses of Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, in Aksharamlai, in verse 44 of Aksharamlai, he explains in words what Arunachala taught him in silence. In that verse, he says, Tirumbiya Handane Dinamaha Kankan Teriyamendranayan Arunachala. That means turning inwards, see yourself with the inner eye. It will be known. Thus you said, my Arunachala. So Arunachala obviously didn't say that in words because Arunachala is a mountain. So the Arunachala, that's what Arunachala taught Bhagavan in silence. But because we don't have the purity of mind and heart to understand the silent teaching which is ever going on in our own heart, it is necessary for Bhagavan, for Arunachala to appear outwardly in human form as Bhagavan to give us these teachings in words. But the function of the outward Guru is only to turn us within. So a true Guru will never say, come to me, I will give you liberation. The true Guru, as Bhagavan made clear, will not say, come to me. He'll say, go to you. See, you are always liberated. Liberation is not something that can be given. You just need to see the fact that you are nitya mukta. You're eternally liberated. So there's a nice story that illustrates this. There was a lady devotee called Janaki Matha. She was a great devotee. I mean, she had very great devotion to Bhagavan. One day when she was visiting the ashram, she saw Bhagavan coming from Gosala. And he was accompanied just by one or two attendants. So she thought to herself, this is a very good opportunity. So she approached him. She bowed down. She placed her forehead on his feet and she held his ankles. He stopped and he looked down at her with a smile and asked her, what are you doing? She said, I'm holding the feet of my Guru. And Bhagavan said, this body is perishable. These feet are perishable. If you take this to be your Guru, you will be disappointed. The feet of your Guru are shiny in your heart as I. Hold on to those feet. They alone will save you. So that shows that the function of the outward Guru is only to turn us within, where the true Guru is shining as our own being, I am.
Yeah, yeah. I love one of his other sayings where he says, God, Guru, and the self are one.
One and the same, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
In other words, your own reality is God, your own reality is Guru.
Yes.
And
yes.
for that, we have to turn within.
Yes. Oh, I was going to ask you that. When I read many books of Bhagwan as well, and I came down to his emphasis on two main points. Number one was who am I? Find out the inquiry.
Yeah.
And the second one was turn the mind within.
They're
Can
one
you
and the
explain
same.
some? Is it?
They're one and the same. Because how to find out who am I if we don't turn the mind within? That is, as I said at the beginning, the definition Bhagavan gave for Atma Vichara is always keeping the mind on oneself. Keeping the mind on oneself means keeping the attention on ourselves. That means, that's another way of saying turning the mind within.
Okay.
Because turning the mind within means the terms within and without are relative terms.
Yes.
That is, the mind is within the body, we can say. So many people think if they're got their eyes closed and they're meditating on some thoughts, they're turning within. That's relatively speaking, they're right, relatively speaking, but that is not what Bhagavan meant by turn within. What Bhagavan meant by turn within is turn towards yourself. All these thoughts, feelings, all phenomena of all kinds are external. The only thing that is inside is I. So turn within means turn towards I. In fact, there's a nice word Bhagavan used in Tamil, which is ahamukam. Bhagavan often used that in place of the usual Sanskrit term of antamukam, because antamukam is, what is meant by antamukam is often misunderstood. But Bhagavan used this term in Tamil, ahamukam, which is has a double meaning, because, as you know, aham in Sanskrit is the first person pronoun, I. There's also another word in Tamil, which is also aham, which means inside. It's not at all related to the Sanskrit word, but it means inside or within or heart or home. So when he said ahamukam, that means both turn within and turn towards I, because what he means by turning within is turning towards I. Yeah. So Bhagavan often played on that double meaning of, in Tamil, aham has a double meaning. It's both a Tamil word and a Sanskrit. But they're, of course, this very close, though they're completely independent etymologically. Yeah. That is, I is a pronoun, aham is a pronoun in Sanskrit. In Tamil, it's a noun from a complete, with unrelated derivation, but they coincide. What is inside is only I. So I is the heart. Yeah. And aham also means heart.
Oh, okay.
In Tamil.
He also really emphasized on, he always said, find out where this I rises from and rest there.
Yes, yeah. He didn't actually, he said, investigate the place where I rises, is how he put it in Tamil. Okay. When he said the place, he's not talking about a place in a physical space, a place. He uses the word place metaphorically. So what does I rise from? The rising I is ego. Ego is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. From where can this rise except from the fundamental awareness I am? We can think of it in this way. In sleep, what exists in sleep? Only our own being, only I am. In waking and dream, we rise from sleep. So where are we rising from? We're only rising from I am. So the place where I rises, the source from which I rises, is only our own being, I am. So he said, investigate the source from which I rises. That means we need to attend to ourselves, attend to our own being. So it's another way of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Whatever Bhagavan expressed it in many ways, but he was however he expressed it, what he meant is that we have to keep our mind on ourselves, as he put it in that when he defined the meaning of the term Atma Vichara. So whether you think about it as investigating the source from which I rose, or investigating your being, or however it all amounts to keeping your attention on yourself. That's on your own being, I am.
Yeah. And it's beautiful how almost all his teachings just come down always to I. Find out what is I.
Because I is the problem and I is the solution. That is, I as ego is the problem. And the only way the ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourselves. As ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am Michael, I am Sukhdev. This is a false identification. So it's a false awareness of ourselves. How to get rid of this false awareness? Only by the correct awareness of ourselves. So only by knowing ourselves as we actually are, can we get rid of ego.
Yeah.
So I as ego is the problem. I as it actually is the solution.
Yes. It's the way Advaita puts it is, you are never bound. Because you think you are bound, we are going to show you how you are bound, and then we are going to free you, and then you realize you are never bound.
Yes. And how to free yourself from this bondage? Since the bondage is not real, now we feel I am bound. How to free ourselves from this bondage? Only by investigating the I that is bound and finding that actually, if we investigate this I, we will find that it is eternally liberated, nitya mukta.
Yes, yes, yes. Michael,
But for that, we need to, all-consuming love. Bhakti is absolutely essential, because without that, we will not be willing to let go of our. Now we have so much attachment to this person we take ourselves to be.
Yeah.
And we're not willing to give that up. Even when death comes to this person, we're going to be forcibly separated from this person. But the I that is aware of itself as I am this person will then latch on to some other person.
Yes.
Bhagavan gave, I think the analogy is given even in the Upanishads. Bhagavan gave the analogy. There's a particular type of insect you may have seen. It's a type of worm. It's got teeth at either end, and it moves it stretches out and holds on to something, and then it curls its back and then latches on to the same thing and then moves on and move on. Like that, ego cannot stand for a moment without holding something. So when this body becomes old and decrepit and finally we have to let go of this, we'll grab onto something else. So the problem is not the body. The problem is the I that keeps on grasping, projecting and grasping a body. See, in dream, we've let go of this body, but we project and grasp some other body. So this will continue. The dreams will come to an end, but the dreaming will continue so long as the dreamer is there. Who is the dreamer? The dreamer is ego. So ego is the problem.
Yes, yes. Michael, I'm going to ask you this. I know you told me not to go there, but I'm going to ask, how does you have undeniable devotion? And I said this in the beginning, we're going to hear devotion in your voice for Bhagavan, and I can see the sparkle in your eyes every time you talk about him. It's like a childlike, love for how devotion. I wish I had that kind of devotion. How does one cultivate that?
It is. We are all undergoing a process.
Yes.
That is, grace has drawn us to this path. And by following, the more we try to follow this path, the more we will come under the sway of grace. And whatever love we have for following this path, that is grace operating through us. As Bhagavan said, grace isn't something that comes outside. Grace is ever present in our heart. So grace has to work through us. So people ask, is it a matter of effort or grace? Whatever effort we make is only by grace. There's a beautiful line, Manikavasaka, who's a great Tamil saint, great Shiva Bhakta. He's written a work called Tiruvasakam. The first work in Tiruvasakam is a long poem called Shiva Puranam. And in one of I can't remember which line it is, early on, maybe about line 6 or so, he says, Avanarulale Avantal Vanangi. That means only by worshipping his feet, only by his grace.
Yes.
So without his grace, we wouldn't be attracted to this path at all. It's only because of grace. And what is grace? Grace is the infinite love that Bhagavan has for us. But Bhagavan is that love himself. That is Shiva and his grace, Shiva and Shakti. Grace is Shakti. Shiva and Shakti are one. So Bhagavan and his grace are one. Bhagavan and the love that he has for us is one. In Bhagavan's view, we are nothing other than himself. So he loves us not as the person we take ourselves to be, he loves us as himself. So Bhagavan's love is infinite. There is no jiva in this vast universe who Bhagavan doesn't love fully. Even the worst of sinners, because Bhagavan doesn't see them as a sinner, he sees them as they actually are. So he loves us all as himself. So the love that he has for himself, the love that he has for us as himself, is what we experience as his grace. So his grace is ever present. But as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used two nice analogies in this context. He said, the winds of grace are ever blowing. But to avail yourself of that grace, you have to unfurl your sail.
Yeah.
That's one analogy. Another very nice analogy I like. He said, the rain of grace is ever pouring, but when it falls on a mound, it runs off. It only collects in the low-lying places. So the more humble we are, the more we subside, the more we will be overwhelmed by grace, the more we'll come under the sway of grace. So it's all about the subsidence of ego. It is grace that brings about the subsidence of ego, and the more ego subsides, the more we become like the low-lying place where all the water gathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all about subsiding, subsiding, subsiding.
Humility and being humble.
So long as we think I am something, we are wasting the opportunity. That grace is ever in our heart, but by its grace we need to subside.
Yeah. Michael, there's one book, I've read many books of, like I ordered a lot. There's one book I loved, and you have a role to play in that book. You have been mentioned in the book by David Godman, Be As You Are.
Yes.
Number one, I love the title, and I've read it, and I think there is a conversation where Bhagavan says, "Be as you are," and that's, I think, that's where the title came from. But what I love about that book is the way it has been divided into chapters about different teachings.
Yes.
Now, I would like to hear your Bhagavan's teachings on meditation. Did he encourage meditation, or how did he say it should be done for those who are doing it, and maybe not required for somebody who doesn't want to do it?
It depends what we mean by meditation. Meditation simply means thinking or fixing the mind on something. So there's many different types of meditation. You can meditate on the name or form of God. Such meditation is very good, because if you do that meditation with love, it's a way that name or form of God becomes a focus for your love. So that such meditation is very efficacious. You can simply do meditation just to control the mind or something. That may have its own benefits, but better than any other type of meditation is meditating on ourself. Because God is, what is the true form of God? What is the Swarupa of God? Yes, God appears in so many different names and forms, and we each are attracted to different names and forms of God. And it's good to worship names and forms of God. But ultimately, we want to, what is the true form of God? What is the Swarupa of God? The Swarupa of God is I am. He's shining in the heart of each and every one of us as I am. So though we can also worship him in external form, he's most intimately present in our heart as our own self, as I am. So the best meditation of all is Swarupa Dhyana, meditation on our own real nature, on I am. That is what is otherwise called Atma Vichara. And when we meditate on our own being, we are meditating, we have the understanding, but God is what is shining in our heart as I, so we meditate on him as I with love. But love is the essential, in any type of meditation, but love is the essential ingredient. If you don't have love, your mind will be wandering here and there. So whether you're meditating on a name or form of God, or on the Swarupa of God, which is ever shining in our heart as I, the love is essential.
Yeah. Wow.
In Gita, Krishna says, Aham Atma Gudakesha, I am Atma, in the heart of every living being. He says in one place. In another place, he says, Atma samstam mana kritva na kinchitapi chintayat. Fix your mind on in Atma and do not think of anything else. So that's what Bhagavan's, that verse summarizes the whole of Bhagavan's teachings.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this. It's nice that you picked it up because in a lot of places, Bhagwan actually, after giving so many teachings, also says, uh, why do you need all these teachings? All you need to do is just surrender on to me, and mine is the burden.
Yes, exactly. And how do we surrender to him? He is ever shining in our heart as I. So long as we're looking outwards, we're not surrendered to him. If we want to surrender to him, we have to turn our mind within with heart-melting love and thereby subside at his feet in our own heart.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
is the true surrender. Bhagavan, there's a sentence in Nana where Bhagavan defines what is giving oneself to God. He
Oh,
says, I'll say the sentence in Tamilam and I'll explain it. Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambavataku, satram idam kodamo, apmanishta paranai irapade, tanai isanaku alipadam. That means being as atmanishta param. That means being one who is firmly fixed as oneself, giving not even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than atmachintana. Atmachintana means thought of oneself. In other words, self-attentiveness, attending to oneself, is giving oneself to God. So what he implies there is by attending to ourselves, we subside and all other thoughts subside along with us. Other thoughts can rise only when we attend to them. If we are attending only to ourselves, there's no room for the other thoughts to rise. So we will subside, and thereby we will be as we actually are, be as you are. That is what you mean by Abmanishta Paranayiripte, being as one actually is. That alone is giving oneself to God. In other words, the pinnacle of the path of devotion is surrender.
yes.
When we start surrendering, we start by trying to surrender our will to God. Because we don't want to have any will of our own. We want whatever be your will, that is my will. I don't want anything of my own. So we try to give up all our own likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments. Whatever you will for me, that is what is good for me. You know what is best. So we try to surrender our will to God. And we can do so to a certain extent, so long as we're worshiping God as something externally. We see there's so many stories of their great saints who completely surrendered or almost completely surrendered their will to God. They completely just so much in love with God. That is, by following that path, we can surrender to a certain extent, but so long as we remain separate from God, in other words, so long as we remain as ego, we cannot be totally free of likes and dislikes. It's the very nature of ego to have vasanas. So if we want to completely surrender our will to God, the only way to do it, we need to surrender ourselves to God. That's why surrender must eventually come to atma samapanam, surrendering ourselves. That means surrendering ego. And since the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to other things, but to subside by attending to itself, how are we to surrender ourselves completely to God? Only by turning our attention within and keeping it fixed firmly on God, who is ever shining in our heart as our own being, I am. So Bhagavan's path is the very pinnacle of the path of devotion. It is devotion in its very purest form.
Yeah. Wow. That a lot of people would probably contradict that.
They may think like that, but if you really want to understand the path of bhakti, if we read Bhagavan's 5 hymns on Aranacha Stuti Panchakam, particularly Aksharamalai, the 108 verses, there it's so clear the oneness of bhakti and jnana. Because bhakti is all about giving ourselves to God. And what remains when we give ourselves entirely to God, that is jnana, which is God himself. So bhakti and jnana are inseparable.
Yes, yes. The
Any
reason I said it
the
was inseparable is because a lot of people would identify the teachings of Bhagavan with Advaita and Jnana instead of,
yes,
but
yes,
he's so devotional when
yes, yes,
Bhagavan
yes,
talks about God and love. You can actually feel he means
yes, yes,
pure
yes,
love.
yes. Pure, pure, pure love. Bhagavan is love itself.
Yes.
There's a verse in Aksharamlai, beautiful. Well, I love all the verses, but there's one that particularly appeals to me. Ambuvillali pol amburu vunilene anbai karetala arunachala. That means Arunachala graciously melt me like ice melts in water, graciously melt me as love in you, the form of love. So, what greater bhakti can you have?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
lose yourself completely in that which you love. And that's such an apt simile. He is the great ocean of love.
yeah.
We are like little pieces of ice floating around in this great ocean. We are because our hearts are still hard with all our worldly desires. We are still, but we want to melt, lose ourselves completely in Him. But even when we are in the form of ice, ice is nothing but water. So He is always our own Swarupa. Even when we are going outwards and doing so many terrible things in the world, He is ever shining in our heart. That's why He said, Guru is always pulling us from within and pushing us from outside.
I can mentally hear him saying, if somebody said, we are trying to melt ourselves in love, Bhagwan would say, find out who is it that is trying to do that.
Yes, because that is the way to melt in love.
Yeah.
But in order to find that out, you need to have great love. So only by
Yes.
love we can melt ourselves in love.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that love is the grace working within us.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that grace is His love. The love He has for us is what works through us in order for us to give ourselves entirely to Him.
Yeah. My journey devotion started with the same kind of devotion for Krishna.
Yes.
And then I was so in love. It was like, if there is anything beyond the love that I have for Krishna, I do not even want it. I just want to be in this love. And then I
Yes.
was pushed onto the path of jnana. I came into Advaita Vedanta. And then I came across the teachings of Bhagavan. And then Bhagavan had this disciple, Papaji. I don't know, I'm sure you've heard of him.
I've heard of him, yes.
Yeah. Papaji had the same kind of devotion for Krishna. And
Yeah.
then you know the story of when he went to meet
I've
him,
heard, yeah.
and Papaji told him, I was playing on the other side with Krishna, and Bhagavan tells him, is Krishna there right now? And he says no. And he tells him, the God that comes and goes is not the real God.
Yeah, exactly,
And
exactly.
that really hit me, and it made me understand that I was so in love with the form of Krishna
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I had to let go of the form.
We are all in love. Who cannot love the form of Krishna? Krishna
Uh,
is so lovable. But why He appears in that form is in order to tell us to turn within. In
yes.
the Gita itself, Bhagavan's teachings are there in the Gita. Krishna very clearly says, Atma samsta mana kritva na kinchitapai chintayat.
Uh,
That's what it's all about.
you need to translate that. I
Atma samstam mana kritva means make the mind stand firmly in itself or be fixed in itself.
fixed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Do not think of anything else whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if our attention is fixed on ourselves, there's no room for any other thoughts.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is Ananya Bhakti, where there's room for no other. Krishna also talks about that. Think of the bhakti, but is without any other.
Yes.
So only if Krishna is our own self can
Yes.
we love him without any otherness.
Yes. 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 Michael, uh, you do a lot of satsangs, and people come to attend them online, offline, with gone way past the 1 hour mark, but how can people get in touch with you, the ones who would want to learn more about Bhagwan's teachings? I'll mention all the websites and all the links I'll put down below
Yeah.
for anyone to do that. But how do they, or what do you offer to the seekers?
Uh, I, I mean, I've got nothing of my own. If people ask me questions, I will answer, and I love to talk about Bhagavan's teaching. So, if anyone wants to ask me any questions, on my website there's a page where I give. It's a contact page, but previously I used to answer emails and things, but nowadays they're just I could no longer. I no longer had time to answer all the emails that I used to receive. So now I say, if anyone wants to ask questions, if they attend any of I don't organize any meetings. Various groups around the world organize meetings. So anyone who wants to ask questions, they can come and attend these meetings and ask any questions about Bhagavan teachings or anything related to this.
Do,
It's
do you
all
do any
ultimately.
do you do any offline meetings like in houses
No,
or
no.
no those?
I,
Okay. Okay. Michael, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything that you would like to tell the viewers and the listeners that I may have missed out or didn't ask?
um,
I was going to ask you one more thing. Because I've read Bhagwan's teachings also extensively, and now they're just coming up. He also says that uh, he talks about all the various ways that the self or the truth has been described, but he says the Bible describes it in the best way as "I am that." Have you read
uh,
this about him somewhere?
yeah. That is what Bhagavan said. That is in the Upanishads. There are 4 mahavakyas. All
Uh-huh.
those mahavakyas, they're all um, teaching the truth of Jiva Brahmaikya, the oneness of Jiva and Brahman. So those mahavakyas are Tattvamasi, you are that. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman.
Yeah.
Prajnanam Brahman, awareness is Brahman. That means our own awareness is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. This very self is Brahman. So all of these are emphasizing, but Brahman is what we actually are. Why are these teachings necessary? Because we are all seeking things outside ourselves. We are seeking happiness outside ourselves. We're seeking knowledge outside ourselves. Whatever we seek outside ourselves. Why? Because we feel we're deficient. We feel something is lacking in us. So we're seeking it outside. So why do the Upanishads tell us you are that? In order to turn our attention back towards ourselves. So if we understand these mahavakyas correctly, as Bhagavan says, Bhagavan had very nicely expressed it in verse 32 of Uludunaptu. When the Vedas declare you are that, I won't give an exact meaning. I'll paraphrase it because there's a lot of implication there. So what he implies is, but when the Vedas tell us you are that, what should our response be? Or if I am that, then what am I? That is the aim of that teaching, you are that, is to turn our attention away from that as something other than ourselves, back towards I. So the aim of the Mahavakyas is to turn our attention back towards I. If I am Brahman, then how can I know Brahman? Only by knowing myself. So the whole point of the Mahavakyas is to turn our attention back to ourselves. So Bhagavan says, when they say you are that, if instead of investigating what am I, and thereby knowing and being what one actually is, if one goes on thinking, I am not this body, I am that, it's only due to weakness of mind, due to lack of strength, strength of understanding. If we really understand the Mahavakya, we should investigate ourselves. So why did Bhagavan, but what Bhagavan said is, among all the Mahavakyas, greater than the mahavakyas in the Vedas is the mahavakya that happens to be in the Bible.
Yes.
Many people won't like it when Bhagavan says this, but he had a good reason for saying that. That is what is said in the Bible. I think there's a story about when, like in the Upanishads and Puranas, so many teachings are given, but in the form of stories. It is similar in the Bible. So the story in the Bible is that the Jewish people were all slaves of in Egypt, and they've been slaves for several generations. So God told Moses to go and tell Pharaoh to release his people. So Moses asked God, "Who shall I say has sent me?" And then God says, "I am that I am. Say that I am has sent you." The words in Hebrew are people have a lot of, they've tried to interpret those words in many ways. But I think what those words mean is I am is what I am. Say that I am has sent me. So what he's saying there is that there's no I other than I. That is what Bhagavan teaching. If you read English books on Bhagavan's teachings, you'll find in many places it is translated, but Bhagavan talked about I.
Yes.
When ego investigates itself and subsides, what shines forth is, it's usually put in English as I-I, but that is a misinterpretation. In Tamil, what the words Bhagavan used were aham. Sorry, he used the words in Tamil nan, and in Sanskrit he used words aham. Just like if you say soham means saha aham. Does that mean he hyphen I? No, it means he is I. Shivaham, Shiva aham means Shiva is I. Likewise, aham means I is I am I.
Oh.
So what he meant by that is the same that is referred to in the Bible as I am I. Why he said that? Because I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, the Mahavakyas, they are very useful as preliminary teachings. When our attention is going outwards, seeking God or Brahman or happiness or whatever outside ourselves, it is appropriate that we are taught, you are that. But when we go within to investigate who am I, what is the final experience? It's not going to be I am Brahman, because Brahman is nothing other than I. It will be I am I.
Wow.
Now we're aware of ourselves as I am this person. I am Sukhdev, I am Michael. Because we're identifying ourselves with a name and form. But we can't actually be anything other than what we...
Yes.
So the ultimate realization is I am I and nothing other than I. That's why he said, what is said in the Bible, that is the greatest of all the Mahavakyas, because it's expressing the same truth, but it's expressing it in the ultimate way. Because it's implicit when it is said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That means there's no Brahman other than I. When it is said Tatvamasi, there's no Tat other than Tvam. There's no that other than you. So we need to stop investigating, looking for Brahman or looking for that as if it's something outside ourselves. Once we understand it is I, we need to investigate that I. And then what will we find? Oh, I'm not Sukhdev, I'm only I.
Yes.
So it's a very deep and subtle point. So I have written in some places, but this aham, I am I, or nan, this is the Ramana Mahavakya.
Oh, wow.
This is the Mahavakya given by Bhagavan.
Wow. Michael.
Because this affirms the real implication of the teaching Aham Brahmasmi.
Yes.
Because if I am Brahman, that means Brahman is I, then who am I? I am I. There's no second thing. Because what is Advaita? Ekam eva Advaitiam, one only without a second.
That's a second.
So if Brahman is one only without a second, and Brahman is I, then there's only I, nothing but I.
Yes.
So who am I? I am I.
Wow. Wow. Michael, you are the true embodiment of Bhagavan's teachings. Everything that I have spoken, asked you, you have brought it back to I, without
Yeah.
diverting from anything else.
By his grace, he has given me this love for this subject. But I'm far from being the embodiment, because to be the embodiment of Bhagavan's teachings, we need to subside. And I haven't yet subsided, but he's given me the love, and I'm very confident that one day, by his grace, the final subsidence will take place. Until then, we do our best to follow the path he has shown us.
I don't know what to say. It's so much. I could actually get tears in my eyes just listening to you. I can feel the devotion, the love you have for him. And
where did this love come from? It comes only from him.
yes,
I'm just an ordinary person. My mind is still full of so many vasanas, going here, there, and everywhere. So I still haven't got that full love, but at least to some extent, he's given me love for him. And
yes,
there's a beautiful verse in Aksharamlai, so many beautiful verses. One of them, Bhagavan says, Nesa milenakun aseye kartane mosanchaya daralaranachala. That means, in me who had no love, you aroused desire for you. Do not disappoint me. Do not cheat me. So he has given us this love for him, and he will certainly ensure that this love bears fruit.
yes, yes. Like he always says, your job is only to surrender onto me. That's it, and forget about it.
Exactly. It's all about surrender. It's all about subsiding.
Yeah.
And that is possible only by his grace.
Yeah.
Avanaralale, avantal vanangi. Only by his grace we can bow to him. We can surrender to him.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been an absolute honor. I truly feel myself blessed to be talking to you. And I wish everyone would have this kind of devotion to whichever higher power they believe in. The grace shine upon all of us. Thank you so much. I will be putting all the links, and I will send you a copy of the video as well. Is there anything final you'd like to say, anyone? Or is
Namo Ramanaya.
Thank you. Sending blessings and love to you.
Right. Okay, I'll say one final thing. This for devotees of Bhagavan, this Namo Ramanaya is a very favorite mantra. Sadhu Om, who was a devotee of Bhagavan, who I was very fortunate to spend time with, he used to explain the meaning of Namo Ramanaya. He said, Namo Ramanaya Mano Maranaya. Namo Ramanaya, prostrating to Bhagavan, is for what? For Mano Maranaya, for the death of the mind.
Death of the mind. Wow.
So by changing the letters around, Namo Ramanaya becomes Mano Maranaya. So the purpose of Namo Ramanaya is Mano Maranaya, for the death of the mind.
Yeah. Wow, you brought
that
up
is what we are all seeking.
You brought up a beautiful topic. You know, I like I said, there's one book that Bhagavan himself really recommended. I don't know if you have read this, and this is from the Ramana Ashram. Advaita Deepika Bodhi. Yeah, I found this such a beautiful book as well. Bhagavan has recommended this in much of his teachings, and it ends at the point where the last chapter is the extinction of the mind, and the starting of it is so beautiful. It says to extinct or destroy the mind is so simple. It is so simple. Why? Because if you go to look for the mind, there is no thing called a mind.
Yep, that is the very heart of Bhagavan's teachings.
Yeah.
And talking of destruction of mind, but in the last verse of Ulladu, Bhagavan defines what is mukti. That is,
Yeah.
there are so many different views about mukti. Some people say in mukti, you still retain your form. Some people say it's formless. Some people say you can be with form or without form. These are so many different views are there. Bhagavan answers all these different views. He says, if it is said that the liberation one attains is with form or without form, or with or without form, I will say destruction of the ego form, but distinguishes liberation with form, without form, or without form, itself is mukti. So he ends Ulladu, which is his deepest teachings, his deepest philosophical teachings, we can say, by emphasizing that annihilation of ego is liberation. And from where he ended that, he began Aksharamlai, which is his the 108 verses of heart-melting love that he sang. The first verse he says, Arunachala mena ahamenene pava ahateverarupai Arunachala. Arunachala, you eradicate ego of those who meditate on you in the heart as I, who recognize that Arunachala is what is I, who's shining in the heart as I. So where he ends Ulladu, he begins Aksharamlai. So this whole of Bhagavan's teachings is nothing but complete self-surrender, complete eradication of ego.
Yeah. Do you remember any of his teachings where he distinguishes between Jivan Mukti and Vidya Mukti?
Bhagavan
Like we
said
talked about.
all such differences are only in the view of the onlooker. Because for the jnani, there's no body in the first place.
Yeah. Okay.
Bhagavan in Ulladu, a supplement to the 40 verses, in one verse, Bhagavan gives an analogy. Just like a person sleeping in a cart, in the old days when they nowadays you don't see them so much, but when I was first in India nearly 50 years ago, it was still a very common sight to see the old bullock carts with the big wheels and two bullocks at the front. They were all over the place. So referring to such a bullock cart, if someone is sleeping in such a cart, they don't know whether the cart is moving or whether the cart is standing still or whether the cart is unyoked. Likewise, for the jnani who is sleeping in the body, that when he says he's sleeping in the body, he's completely unaware of the body. The movements of the body, the sleep or the nishta, the samadhi, all are completely unknown to him.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he has no connection with body. For the jnani, Bhagavan, another thing Bhagavan often said is about the jnani, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana means pure awareness. Jnani means the one who knows pure awareness. Who can know pure awareness? Only pure awareness can know pure awareness.
Yes.
So the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman, as it's said in the Upanishads.
Yes.
The jnani is nothing but pure awareness itself. And in the view of pure awareness, there's no such thing as body or world or anything.
Yes.
So for the jnani, there's no body at all. But in the view of others who take the jnani to be a person, so long as the body is living, we say they're jiva mukta. When the body dies, we say they're videha mukta.
Yeah.
But for the jnani, there's no difference at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for the
He said the
jnani,
exact same
there
words
is
that you
one
said.
only without a second. So how could there be any differences?
Yes, I remember he said exact. You've put it in the exact words that he said. For the jnani, there is no Jivan Mukti or Vidya Mukti. There's no difference.
It's only in the view of others all these differences.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Right.
I will have to end it now, and I will send you the recording. And stay blessed. Keep doing what you're doing. The world needs people like you.
It's all Bhagavan's doing, not my doing. So, so long as he wants to use this body and mind, he'll use it. And when it's time to be discarded, he'll discard it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I'll see you.
Right.